Don't move!
Please, I'm pregnant.
Good. That means you're worth more alive.
I swear I don't know what you want.
You texted him.
That was a mistake.
A mistake?
Yes, I dialed the wrong number.
You sent the most dangerous mafia boss in Korea a photo of your pregnancy? By mistake?
I didn't know who the number belonged to.
Then fix it.
How?
Call him.
No, please.
Dial.
Okay.
Put it on speaker.
Zara's fingers shook so badly, she could barely grip the phone. But she found the number. She pressed call. Silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds. Phone ringing. Hello. Her throat nearly closed. Mr. Kang. A pause. Long deliberate. Who is this? It's Zara. Her voice broke on the single syllable. They found me. Who? The men you warned me about. The sound of glass shattering filled the room. Then the line went impossibly quiet. One of the men snatched the phone. Switched it to speaker. Well. Kang Tae-jin. Who is this? The man holding the woman carrying your heir. Silence again. Then measured and cold. You have the wrong man. Do we? She texted you a pregnancy photo last night. That doesn't make it mine. Maybe not. The gunman smiled at Zara with dead eyes. But your enemies believe it is. And that's enough. Let her go. Or what? You have 10 seconds. The men exchanged glances. One of them laughed. 10 seconds? For what? To start running. Laughter exploded through the room. Rich. Mocking. Loud. You still think people fear you, old man? A pause so long Zara thought the line had died. No. Something in his voice shifted. Like a door closing. Like a furnace igniting behind concrete walls. You should fear what happens next. She heard it then, in the distance behind his voice. Movement. Engines. A controlled storm beginning to move. Boss. A new voice on his end. Low and urgent. Prepare the convoy. All of them. Yes. The men in the room stopped laughing. They just started a war. The line went dead. If you are watching this right now and your heart is already racing, you are exactly where this story wants you. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Because this video is 60 minutes of the most intense Afro-Korean romance you have ever watched. Drop in the comments where you are watching from, and whether you are Team Zara or Team Tae-jin. Let's go. 3 months earlier, Zara Okoye had never even heard the name Kang Tae-jin. She existed in a small, manageable world. A second-floor apartment in Busan with a window that faced a bakery. The smell of bread every morning. A classroom full of 10-year-olds who could not yet pronounce the letter F. Essays to grade. Lesson plans to write. Bills that arrived in cheerful yellow envelopes as if the amount printed inside was not slowly suffocating her. She was 7 months pregnant and absolutely alone. Daniel Carter had been easy to love. British accent. Easy laugh. The kind of man who held doors open and remembered how you took your coffee. He had been teaching at the same academy when they met. They dated for 8 months before she told him. She remembered the exact shape of his face in that moment. The way the warmth left his eyes so completely, so instantly, that she wondered if it had ever truly been there. He left 3 weeks later. A note on the kitchen counter. Something about needing space. Something about not being ready. She had read it twice and then folded it very small and dropped it in the bin beneath the sink. She did not cry for a week. Then she cried for an entire weekend and never cried about him again. But the bills did not care about her grief. The landlord, Mr. Choi, knocked every Thursday with the particular gentleness of a man who wanted to seem sympathetic while absolutely intending to evict her. The academy had reduced her hours. Walking long distances had become difficult. Sleep had become a negotiation between back pain and the baby's schedule, which apparently involved vigorous activity at 2 in the morning. On a Tuesday night in October, sitting on her bathroom floor because it was the coolest room in the apartment, Zara lifted her shirt and looked at her belly. Full. Round. Already real in a way that made her chest ache with something she could not name. Love or fear or both at once. Layered so completely they had become the same thing. She picked up her phone and opened Daniel's contact. She had not deleted it. She was not sure what that said about her. She took the photo. Overhead light. One hand resting on the curve of her stomach. The shadow falling soft across the tiles. She typed, You may not want us. But this baby is still yours. She pressed send. She did not check the number. 1 digit. A 3 where a 5 should have been. The message flew out into the night and landed somewhere it was never supposed to reach. She set the phone down and pressed her back against the cold bathtub and breathed slowly in the dark. Somewhere in Incheon, in a room full of men who moved very carefully and spoke very quietly, a phone lit up on a marble table. Kang Tae-jin was the kind of man that silence followed. Not the comfortable silence of empty rooms. The other kind. The silence that fell over a crowd when he walked through a door. The silence that arrived before consequences. He was 41 years old. He had built his empire from nothing and defended it from everyone. His face appeared in no newspapers. His name existed in police files under the heading unconfirmed. He wore dark suits with no tie and said precisely what he meant and nothing else. He was in the middle of a meeting with 4 men, who collectively controlled the shipping lanes of 3 Korean ports when the message arrived. He did not reach for the phone immediately. He finished his sentence. He accepted the glass of water Director Min Seo poured. He let the 4 men shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Only then did he pick up the phone and look at the screen. The photo. A woman's bare stomach. Heavily pregnant. The overhead light casting a shadow across the tile floor. A bathroom. Modest. Clean. The kind of quiet desperation that pressed itself into every corner of the frame. You may not want us. But this baby is still yours. Silence. The 4 men watched him. Min Seo watched him. Nobody spoke. Tae-jin looked at the photo for a long time. There was something about it that cut past the surface of his mind and reached somewhere further down. Somewhere he had learned to keep very locked. The loneliness of it. The way the woman's hand rested on her own stomach, as if holding herself together. The way she had pressed send at whatever hour of the night this had been taken, alone, with no one to tell. Continue without me, he said. He stood. He walked to the window. Outside, Incheon glittered like something that had been broken and put back together wrong. He called Min Seo over quietly. Find out who sent this. Min Seo's eyes didn't flicker. Of course. Tae-jin put the phone in his jacket pocket. He stood at the window for a long time, and the men behind him breathed carefully and said nothing. Zara was eating instant noodles and watching a drama about a woman who discovered her husband was secretly a vampire when her phone rang. Unknown number. Busan area code. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Is this the owner of this number? A man's voice. Formal. Smooth. Not unkind. Yes. You sent a message earlier this evening. To a number that does not belong to the person you intended. Zara set down her chopsticks. The vampire drama continued on mute. Ah yes. I think I may have dialed wrong. I'm sorry, I'll just. The person who received your message would like to speak with you. Excuse me. A brief silence. Then a different voice came on the line. Low. Unhurried. Carrying the particular weight of a man who had never once needed to raise it. You made a mistake tonight, he said. That is understandable. I am calling to confirm that the message was not intended for me, and to ask that you not send further contact to this number. Of course, Zara said immediately. I'm so sorry. It was meant for someone else entirely. I assumed so. A pause. Are you safe? Zara blinked. I am sorry. The message suggested a difficult situation. I am asking if you are safe. She almost laughed. A complete stranger calling in the middle of the night to ask if she was safe. I'm fine, she said. Thank you. I'm sorry for the confusion. Good night, he said. The line disconnected. Zara stared at the ceiling. The baby kicked once hard, directly beneath her ribs, as if registering an opinion. She picked up her chopsticks and turned the volume back on. She did not sleep well that night. She told herself it was the noodles. She noticed them 3 days later. A black car parked on the street below her window. Different car, same position the next morning. The morning after that, 2 men in dark jackets standing near the entrance of the bakery across the road, not buying anything, just watching. She stood at her window and felt the particular cold of being observed. That evening her buzzer rang. She pressed the intercom. Who is it? Kang Tae-jin. Her hand stayed on the intercom button for 3 full seconds. Then she pressed the door release, because every rational thing inside her told her not to, but she did it anyway, and she stood in the middle of her small living room and waited. He was taller than she expected. That was the first thing. Broad through the shoulders. A dark coat that had cost more than her monthly rent. He stood in her doorway and looked at her apartment with the careful attention of a man cataloging vulnerabilities. Then he looked at her, and she felt the full force of his stillness for the first time. "You've been watching my building," she said. "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her stomach briefly, then back at her face. "Because the wrong number you dialed belongs to me. And the people who want to hurt me are thorough. I don't know anything about you." "I know." He stepped inside without being invited. He looked at the window, the lock, the thin chain on the door. His expression said nothing, but something in the set of his jaw tightened. "I believe your message was meant for someone else." "Yes. The baby's father." "He is not in your life." "No." "Then you are alone here." "I'm Manajin." He turned and looked at her directly. His eyes were darker than she expected. Not cold exactly, controlled. As if a great deal of something was being held very carefully in place. "I cannot have children," he said. Not as an explanation. As a fact being placed quietly on the table between them. "The doctors informed me of this some years ago." She had no idea what to say to that. "I'm sorry. I don't tell you this for sympathy." He moved toward the door. "I tell you because I want you to understand why I intend to ensure that child is safe. Mr. Kang. I will not disturb your life. But my men will remain nearby." He stopped at the door. Turned once more. His eyes dropped to her stomach for just a second. And in that second, something crossed his face so quickly she almost missed it. Something that looked impossibly like grief. "Good night, Ms. Okoye." He left. Zara sat down heavily on the sofa. The baby moved in slow, deliberate circles. The apartment felt different. Like something had shifted in the atmosphere. Like a door had opened somewhere that she could not see and wasn't sure she should walk through. The things that changed she noticed in layers. The first layer was practical. Her medical bill for the last prenatal visit, the one she had been dreading opening, arrived marked paid in full. She stood in the kitchen holding the envelope and read it 3 times. She called the hospital. The payment had been made by a corporate account she did not recognize. She sat down and was quiet for a long time. Then there were the groceries. A box left outside her door on Wednesday morning. Fruit. Prenatal vitamins. Warm socks in a size that suggested someone had done research. Soup, for containers of it already made, the kind her mother used to prepare in Lagos with the exact spices she hadn't tasted in 4 years. She thought about knocking on those soup containers and asking how. She decided against it. She began to notice how people responded to him on the days he visited. And he did visit, irregularly, never for long, always with a reason she could frame as practical. Checking the security of the window. Bringing a doctor to confirm the baby's position. Standing in her kitchen eating crackers from her cabinet, as if this were a perfectly ordinary thing. People in her neighborhood tracked him with their peripheral vision. Her landlord, who had knocked on a Thursday without fail for months, did not knock once in October. Delivery men moved faster. The couple on the floor below, who argued loudly every Friday night, became suddenly very quiet. She started watching him more carefully. The way he spoke to his men, minimal, precise, nothing wasted. The way he listened, with his whole body still and his eyes tracking everything. The way he never touched anything in her apartment without permission. The way he sometimes stood at her window for long minutes, watching the street below, and she couldn't tell if he was protecting her or simply unable to leave. Then one evening she was coming from the bedroom with a glass of water, and she heard him on the phone in the hallway. His voice had dropped to a register she hadn't heard before. "Break his hands." A pause. "Both of them. He stole from me. Make sure he understands it doesn't happen twice." Zara stood completely still in the dark corridor. No hospital. Another pause. "He can walk there himself." She heard him end the call. She heard him move toward the kitchen. She pressed herself against the wall and breathed silently until her heartbeat slowed. When she walked into the kitchen 30 seconds later, he was standing at the stove. He had found her pot. He was heating the soup she hadn't gotten to yet. The same soup from his delivery. He stirred it slowly, with complete concentration, as if it were the only thing in the world that required his attention. He looked up when she came in. "You should eat before 10, he said. "The acid reflux gets worse if you eat late." She sat down at the kitchen table. She looked at him. The set of his shoulders, the easy way he held the wooden spoon, the quiet authority in every movement, and she felt the fear and the warmth and the sheer impossibility of this man collide inside her chest into something she had no word for yet. "Who are you?" she asked. He turned from the stove. "You know who I am." "I know what you are," she said. "That's not the same thing." He was quiet for a moment. Then he placed the bowl in front of her and sat across the table, and for once, for the first and only time she had witnessed, he did not look controlled. He looked tired, like a man who had been carrying something enormous for a very long time, and briefly forgot to hide it. "Eat," he said. She ate. He watched the window. Outside, his men stood in the dark and the city moved around them, and Zara felt the whole strange shape of her life pressing against her ribs like something alive. Daniel came back on a Thursday. He was thinner than she remembered. He had the look of a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks, hollowed out around the eyes, jumpy in a way that made her own shoulders rise. He stood at her door with flowers. White lilies. He had always known she liked lilies. "Zara." He exhaled her name like a confession. "I'm so sorry." She looked at him over the chain. "Daniel. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I need." She let him in. She sat across from him on the sofa with her hands in her lap. And she did not touch the lilies, and she did not cry, and she looked at the man she had loved and waited. He talked for 20 minutes. He was sorry. He had been afraid. He hadn't been ready, but he was ready now. He had been thinking, he had changed. The words arrived in a smooth rehearsed sequence that she recognized, somewhere under her skin, as something learned rather than felt. And then, because he was desperate and because desperate men are incapable of stopping themselves, he said the thing that split everything open. "Zara, I need your help. I owe money. A lot of money. To people who don't accept delays." She went very still. "I didn't know who to turn to. But then I heard, people are talking, Zara, about the man who's been coming here, the black cars, the men outside. And I thought if you could just put in a word. Get out. Zara. Get out of my apartment, Daniel." Her voice was absolutely even. Something in it made him go pale. "Right now." He left the lilies. She put them directly in the bin. That night she lay awake in the dark and understood, with the particular clarity that arrives in the 3 o'clock quiet, that Daniel had not returned for her. He had returned because someone had told him she was connected to something powerful. And someone had told those people too. And those people, whoever they were already building something around her name. She didn't know yet what that meant. She was about to find out. Tae-jin came the next morning. She told him about Daniel before he sat down. She watched his face as she spoke. It changed, nothing visible. He listened. He asked 2 questions, Daniel's full name, and how long he had been gone. Then he made a call in a language she didn't speak, short and quiet. And when he put the phone away, his expression carried something cold that she had not seen directed toward her before. "Daniel Carter owes 800 million won to the Shin Syndicate," he said. She felt the floor shift slightly. "How do you know that already?" "I knew before you told me." He looked at her steadily. "I had him located when he first left Busan. I wanted to know if he was a threat." "Is he?" "He was not." A pause. "But he has become one. He told them about you. About my involvement." "Why would that matter to them?" "Because the Shin Syndicate and I have been in conflict for 2 years over territory in Incheon. If they believe you are significant to me," he stopped. His jaw tightened briefly. "They'll use me against you." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Zara looked at the window. The bakery was open across the street, the early morning bread smell drifting up even through the glass. And she thought about how ordinary everything had looked 3 months ago. "What do we do?" "You move," he said. "Tonight." "Move where?" He looked at her. For the first time she saw something she could not dismiss as calculation. Something that had no tactical reason. "My residence has security that cannot be penetrated." You will be safe there until the baby comes. You're asking me to move into your house. I'm asking you to stay alive. A pause. I recognize those are not the same request. She looked at him for a long time. The baby pushed against her ribs, slow and steady, its own small argument for yes. One condition, she said. Name it. You don't lie to me. About anything. He held her gaze without blinking. Agreed. His penthouse was on the 32nd floor of a building that looked from the outside like it had no reason to exist except to be exactly what it was. Power made vertical. Inside it was quieter than she expected. Dark wood. High ceilings. The kind of space that had been designed to prevent sound from traveling. Minasio showed her to her room. It was large, facing the water, with blackout curtains and a bathroom that made her apartment's bathroom look like something from a previous era. She thanked him. He smiled in the particular way of someone who had learned to perform warmth without accessing it. She explored slowly. The way you do when you are somewhere unfamiliar and very pregnant, and trying to look as if you belong. She found the kitchen. A library. A formal dining room that appeared never to have been used. A balcony she was told she could not use. And then she found the room at the end of the east corridor. The door was slightly open. She pushed it gently. A nursery. Pale walls. A wooden crib. Small, careful details. A mobile of paper cranes above the crib, hand-folded, dozens of them in white and pale gold. A bookshelf already stocked with picture books in Korean and English. A small chest of drawers, and on top of it, placed with the precise intentionality of someone who had thought about nothing else, a stuffed tiger. Orange and white. The fur worn slightly at the ear. As if it had already been held. Zara stood in the doorway for a very long time. She heard him behind her before he spoke. You weren't meant to find this yet, he said. She turned. He was standing in the corridor. His expression was not ashamed. Something older than shame. Something that had been sitting inside him for a long time, and had simply been found. How long has this room been here? She asked. He was quiet. 5 feet. For years, he said. She looked back at the tiger on the chest of drawers. You said the doctors told you it was impossible. They did. But you still built this. I built it the year after they told me. He stepped into the doorway but no further. I don't know why. It seemed important not to accept it completely. She reached out and picked up the tiger. It was soft. Someone had chosen it carefully, not the cheapest version, not the showiest. The right one. She held it against her chest for a moment and felt the baby move beneath her hands. She kicks when I'm near something important, she said. She's been kicking since I walked in here. He looked at her stomach, then up at her face. Something in him, some long-held arrangement of walls and angles, shifted almost imperceptibly. He said. I don't know yet for certain. She shrugged softly. I feel like she's a girl. He nodded once. He stepped back from the doorway, but as he turned she saw it, so briefly it barely existed. The thing that cracked through the surface of Kang Tae-jin for a single unguarded second. He smiled. Just once. Gone before it fully arrived. But she had seen it. And she didn't know what to do with what she felt when she had. She noticed Minasio watching her. Not the way the security staff watched. Outward, strategic, scanning the room for external threats. Minasio watched inward. Watched her specifically. Watched her conversations with Tae-jin. Watched the door to the nursery. Watched her phone. She told herself she was being paranoid. Pregnancy made everything feel more pointed. Every silence heavier, every glance more loaded. Minasio had worked for Tae-jin for 7 years. Tae-jin trusted him with everything. He had told her this himself. But she watched him back. And in the watching she noticed things she filed quietly away without knowing why. The way he left the room for certain phone calls. The particular speed at which he moved after the incident with the van. The slight delay, barely measurable, barely human, before he relayed her location updates. She filed these things and said nothing. Not yet. Not until she was sure. It happened outside the hospital. Her 28-week appointment. Tae-jin had sent 2 cars. She had insisted she could go alone. A small argument that she had lost quickly, because his losing face was apparently not a concept he was familiar with. 2 guards. 1 car visible. 1 car she later learned had been following from a distance. She was walking from the hospital entrance to the car when the van appeared. No warning. No gradual approach. Just a white vehicle that materialized from a side street with the specific deliberateness of something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The door opened. 3 men. Fussed. Practiced. Zara didn't have time to scream before the arm came around her. The door slammed. Her guard shouted somewhere behind her. And then the sound cut off and she was inside the van. And the gun was against her stomach. And everything became extremely simple in the way that only terror can simplify things. Call your mafia boyfriend, the man said. Please, she said. Please the baby. We won't hurt the baby. His voice was almost reasonable. Call him. She called. She heard his voice. She said his name. She said they found me and she heard the shift. That same shift she'd noticed the night he'd first come to her apartment. The door closing, the furnace igniting, but amplified now, enormous, controlled fury moving through the line like a current. She had heard him give orders. She had heard him calm, and she had heard him cold. She had never heard him afraid. She heard it now. For exactly 2 seconds. Before it transformed into something that made the men in the van go very quiet. You have 10 seconds. To start running. The laughter. She would remember the laughter. How confident it was. How completely certain those men were, in that moment, that they held all the power in the world. The headlights came like a judgment. 3 cars. Then 2 more. Surrounding the van in a formation that was not hurried and was not frantic and carried the particular quality of absolute certainty. The movements of men who knew exactly how this was going to end. Tae-jin stepped out of the center car. Dark coat. No weapon visible. He stood in the wash of headlights and looked at the van, and he did not hurry and he did not speak loudly, and the men inside the van. She felt it, physically felt it. Understood that they had made an error from which there was no clean exit. The door opened. She stepped out. He was there before she completed the step. 1 hand at her back, 1 at her arm, moving her behind him in a single practice motion that was both professional and something more than professional, something that did not have a tactical name. You chose the wrong woman, he said. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. By morning there was no van. No men. No evidence. The street was clean and quiet, and the bakery across from her old apartment opened at its usual hour, and the city moved on as if none of it had happened. Zara sat in the penthouse kitchen and drank the tea that had appeared in front of her without being asked for, and she looked at her hands on the table, and she did not ask what had happened to those men because she understood, with complete clarity, that she did not want to know. He sat across from her. He said nothing. He drank his own tea. He watched her face in the quiet way he had, not reading it for information, she realized. Reading it for her. Making sure she was still whole. Thank you, she said eventually. Don't, he said. His voice was rough in a way she hadn't heard before. Don't thank me for this. Why not? He looked at his cup. Because they were there because of me. She looked at him. At the weight he was carrying with his shoulders straight and his face composed. Tae-jin, she said. Look at me. He did. We're okay, she said. Both of us. We're okay. Something moved in his face. Brief. Real. He nodded once and looked back at his cup. And she had the feeling of having been trusted with something immense. The truth about Minacio arrived at 11 o'clock at night. Tae-jin was in a call. She was in the nursery. She had taken to sitting in there, in the chair beside the crib, because the room had a quality of stillness she hadn't found anywhere else. She was reading to the baby from one of the picture books on the shelf, a Korean one about a tiger who couldn't find his stripes, her pronunciation approximate and her accent entirely wrong, when she heard Minacio's voice through the half-open door. He was in the corridor. He thought she was asleep. He was speaking quietly, but not quietly enough. Sector 3. Yes. The delivery is scheduled for Thursday. A pause. She doesn't suspect anything. Yes, Shindipio. Another pause. I said yes. I'll confirm the route. Zara stopped breathing. Shindipio. The head of the Shin Syndicate. Me. 7 years. Tae-jin's most trusted. The man who had shown her to her room and smiled with learned warmth and poured her tea and stood at every meeting and heard every plan. She pressed herself back into the chair and breathed very slowly, and waited until she heard his footsteps move away. Then she picked up her phone and called the one number she knew. He answered in one ring. "What's wrong?" "Minacio," she said. Silence. "He's working for Shin," she said. "I heard him. Just now." He said Shindipio. He said Thursday. Tae-jin. The silence stretched. "Stay in the nursery," he said. "Lock the door. Do not open it until I come myself." Tae-jin. Zara. His voice was controlled, but underneath it. She heard it now because she knew how to listen. The furnace, bright and enormous. Not for Shin. For Minacio. For 7 years. For every plan. For every location confirmed. "I'm coming." She locked the door. She sat in the chair with the tiger in her hands and she watched the locked door, and she breathed and the baby moved in slow steady circles as if keeping her company. The door opened 11 minutes later. His key. His footsteps. She unlocked it. He stood in the doorway. His face was composed. Behind him in the corridor she heard movement she couldn't identify. And then silence fell like something absolute. "He's gone?" she asked. "He is contained," Tae-jin said. "What does that mean?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the crib, which was against every protocol she suspected his entire life was governed by. He sat there, and he was quiet, and she watched something enormous move across his face. 7 years, he said finally. "Yes. He was at my mother's funeral." He stopped. "He handled my finances for 4 years. He knew." He stopped again. She didn't fill the silence. She let it hold what it needed to. "The attack at the hospital," he said. "The timing. The route." He exhaled. "All of it." "All of it," she agreed. He looked at the paper cranes above the crib. He had made them himself. She knew this now, had seen the evidence in the drawer of origami paper, had understood it without needing to ask. This room full of small careful preparations for a life he had been told he could not have. He knew about this room, Tae-jin said, almost to himself. She reached across the space between them and put her hand over his. Just for a moment. Just briefly. His hand was very still under hers, and she felt the tremor he was controlling. Rage or grief or the particular pain of a betrayal too deep for ordinary language. "She's going to be born safe," Zara said. "Whatever they planned for Thursday, she will already be here and she will be safe." He looked at her hand over his. Then up at her face. Then, and this time it lasted longer than a second, he smiled. "Tired. Real. Nothing performed about it." "You are remarkable," he said quietly. She took her hand back. Her heart was doing something she refused to examine. "Don't tell me that." "Why not?" "Because then I'll have to figure out what to do about it." A pause. He stood. He was composed again, almost. "Sleep," he said. "I'll be outside this door." "You don't need to." "Sleep, Zara." She slept. The assault on Thursday was not subtle. She heard it before she fully woke. A sound that didn't belong, glass fracturing somewhere above the quality of accident. The flat crack that she recognized from films but understood immediately was real and was close and was moving toward her. Then the building shook. She was already out of bed. Her feet on the floor. Her hand on the wall. The baby dropped low in that particular way that she had learned meant stress, the body responding to threat in its oldest language. The door opened. Tae-jin. Body armor she had not known he kept in the penthouse. "Come with me. Now." She came with him. They moved fast through the corridor. Faster than she had moved in months, his hand at her back, her breath short, the sounds of the building under assault filling the space around them. Gunfire. Concrete. The shriek of an alarm beginning, and then cutting off. A window to their left exploded inward. He was in front of her before the glass landed. His back to the spray. She heard the small sounds of impact against the armor, and then he turned and there was blood at his temple, and she opened her mouth and he said, "Keep moving," in a voice that allowed no argument. They were in the service corridor. Then the emergency stairwell. The sounds above them were terrible, organized, methodical, The sound of an army that had been given every detail it needed by a man who had sat in meetings and poured tea and smiled with learned warmth. Then it happened. The pain arrived so suddenly and so completely that she grabbed the stair rail and stopped moving. He turned. He saw her face. Something happened in his. The armor, the control, every constructed thing about him went offline. Zara. I think, she breathed. The pain crested and fell and crested again. I think it's starting. It's too early. Tell her that. She grabbed his arm. Taed-jin. We need to go. He called the car. He carried her for the last 2 flights. She did not argue. She was beyond arguing. Her world had compressed to the distance between contractions. Outside the building the gunfight continued above them, lit against the sky. He put her in the back seat and got in beside her and the car moved and she held his hand and squeezed it and he let her and she thought, in the compressed animal clarity of labor, that his hand was steady. That no matter what, his hand was perfectly steady. The emergency room. White lights. Voices. The specific efficiency of people trained for crisis intersecting with the crisis. She was currently inside. He stayed until they would not let him further. She saw him at the corridor threshold. Coat gone, blood dried at his temple. Watching her over the shoulders of 3 nurses who were moving her fast. And she said his name. He heard her. She watched him take 1 step toward her before protocol stopped him. She's going to be okay, she called back. We're going to be okay. The doors closed between them. Later, she could not say how much later, time had reorganized itself into something she could not measure. A doctor came to find Tae-jin in the waiting room. She was healthy. The baby was healthy. Early but not dangerously so. Strong lungs. Strong cry. All fingers. All toes. The doctor wanted to discuss one thing, however. A genetic screening had been run as standard procedure for early labor. There was a marker. Rare. Present in the child. The doctor explained it carefully, and watched the man in front of him, and waited for the response. Tae-jin said, "Run it again." They ran it again. The same marker. The same result. A genetic signature documented in the Kang family medical file. On record at this hospital because Tae-jin had been a patient here, had received his diagnosis here, had sat in a room not unlike this one and been told a thing he had then gone home and refused to accept completely. The doctor said, "I understand this is unexpected." Tae-jin stood up. He walked to the window. He pressed one hand flat against the glass. Outside the city was beginning its morning. Early light, the first cars, the world resuming itself without knowing or caring what had shifted inside this room. He stood there for a long time. Then he turned. "Tell me everything," he said. The doctor explained what the genetics could and could not confirm, what remained uncertain, what the marker meant scientifically, and what it could not, by itself, prove. But he also said this. Daniel Carter had been documented at 2 clinics in Incheon over the past 3 years. One of those clinics had been under investigation for medical records fraud, for the sale of genetic material, for falsifying paternity documentation. Daniel Carter had worked 14 months ago for the Shin Syndicate. In Incheon, the pieces arrived with the particular cruelty of things that had always been true, simply waiting to be assembled. Daniel had not stumbled into Zara's life by accident. He had been placed to get close to someone in Zara's position. Young, isolated, foreign, a woman who could be made to feel grateful, made to feel chosen. A child created with deliberate design, carrying a marker that Shin's people had somehow learned was significant to the Kang bloodline. A contingency. A weapon with a 9-month fuse. Except that Zara had dialed the wrong number. Not the number she had been subtly, patiently, over months, encouraged to use. Not the contact that was supposed to reach a neutral third party who would then inform Tae-jin, through channels Shin controlled, of the child's existence. She had typed a 3 instead of a 5, and the message had gone directly to Tae-jin's personal phone. She had removed every intermediary, every filter, every layer of Shin's design. The plan had been to deliver news of the child to Tae-jin through someone he had reason to distrust. To make him suspicious of the baby, suspicious of Zara, to let him push her away and leave her unprotected and then, when she was isolated and the child close to birth, move. Instead, Tae-jin had received a photo of a woman alone on a bathroom floor in the middle of the night, and he had been quietly, irreversibly undone by it. The wrong number had not created the danger. It had saved her from it. The room they brought her to was quiet. She was sitting up in the hospital bed with the baby against her chest when he came in. He stopped just inside the door. He looked at them, at Zara, tired and lit from inside the way new mothers are lit, and at the small bundle against her, the tiny face, the dark hair. And he stood completely still. "Come here," she said. He crossed the room. He sat in the chair beside the bed. He looked at the baby with an expression she had never seen on him before, stripped of everything, every construction, every careful arrangement. Raw. Terrified. Full of something enormous and fragile. "Hold her," Zara said. "I don't." Feet. She shifted the baby slightly toward him. "Hold her." He held out his hands. She placed the child into them. He held her with the careful precision of a man handling the most irreplaceable thing he had ever been trusted with. And the baby, small and new and absolutely certain of herself, opened her eyes. Dark eyes. Alert. Already curious. Already somehow, already looking at him as if she recognized something. The most feared man in the city looked at the child in his hands, and the child looked back. And he smiled. Not briefly this time. Not for a second before it disappeared. A real smile, full and unguarded and completely human. Cracking open the face of a man who had built a fortress of composure over 40 years and finding, apparently, that a 7-pound person could simply walk through every wall he had ever constructed. Zara watched him. Her eyes stung in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion. "She needs a name," she said. He looked up. Something in his eyes. She would remember this for the rest of her life. The way his eyes looked in that moment. "You choose," he said. "I was thinking Jiera," she said. "The G from your name. The era. That's a Korean word. It means to know," he said quietly. "To understand." "Yes." He looked back at the baby, at Jiera, who was currently conducting a very thorough examination of his thumb with her entire fist. "Jiera," he said. A sound like a door finally opening. Outside the hospital window, Busan was fully awake. The morning had arrived without asking permission. Bright and indifferent and completely ordinary. A city that had no idea what had shifted inside its borders overnight. A woman who had been alone on a bathroom floor 3 months ago, pressing send on a message she meant for someone who didn't deserve it. A man who had built a nursery for a child he'd been told he'd never have, and kept the tiger for 4 years just in case. A wrong number. 1 digit. A 3 instead of a 5. The entire architecture of what came next, resting on that single small mistake that turned out, like all the most important things, to have been exactly right. Sometimes destiny arrives disguised as an error. Sometimes the thing that looks like the wrong turn is the only road that leads somewhere real. Zara Okoye dialed the wrong number and found the right life. If you stayed until the very end of this story, you are the reason this channel exists. Drop in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the nursery? The tiger? The moment she put her hand over his? Tell me. I read every single one. If you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on notifications because Oyinelle Afro-Korean Romance drops new stories every week, and every single one of them will do exactly what this one just did to you. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs a story tonight. And drop where you are watching from. I want to see how far this reaches. See you in the next one.